I'm here with Leslie. We are at the Lazy Magnolia Brewery here in Mississippi. Where are we? Is this Bay St. Louis?
We're in Kiln, Mississippi.
Kiln, okay, very good.
In the Stennis Air Park. It's an industrial air park run by the Hancock County Port and Harbor Commission. And you can hear one of our planes going overhead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, now, you and your husband, Mark, own this brewery. Tell us, first of all, why a brewery?
That's a really good question. And it was an even better question 12 years ago when the craft beer revolution had not made it to the Southeast. At the time we were even exploring this project, there were only a few very small breweries in the area. Abita was the big one at the time, and even they were very small. They weren't much bigger than we are now. You also had Sweetwater, who had just started up, Terrapin, and Yazoo hadn't even started up. St. Arnold was also very new. So these are all the old guys these days. So at the time, there was not much going on here. Mississippi had nothing, and it was an opportunity for us to really make a difference in our home state.
Now, when you talk about Lazy Magnolia, then are you saying that other than a big, massive brewer, and we know a few of them, you can try certain specialty beers?
Well, we just have the advantage of a smaller scale. When one of the big breweries makes a beer, they have to make such enormous quantities that they have to be very, very careful about how they do that. They have to use focus groups because they're going to have a huge amount of product. Now, we have the advantage of very small batches, so we can kind of test market in a smaller area. So, yes, we do have a little bit more flexibility.
Mm-hmm. Where currently can you buy Lazy Magnolia?
In 18 states throughout the Southeast and Midwest and Mid-Atlantic.
Now, why not all 50 states?
Well, we just haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, so it's a matter of marketing to these other states.
It really is, and we still have a lot of ground to cover even here in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm. And what's amazing is that once you've bottled this beer and it's sitting in your cooler ready to be delivered, now we've got transportation.
Well, that's where our distributors and third-party carriers come to play.
That's what you use to get your beer to those other states.
Yes, we are strictly manufacturing. We do not do delivery.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk about manufacturing. For those people that don't know what happens in your process, walk me through it.
Well, we start with grains, primarily malted barley. We do use quite a bit of wheat and some rye and occasionally some other grains. That is crushed in a mill to expose the starchy insides of the grain. That crushed grain is mixed with hot water where conversion takes place. That's where the enzymes become active. They break those starches down into a variety of sugars. Then we extract that sweet sugary liquid from the grains, take it into a kettle where we boil it and add a variety of things, including hops, sometimes honey and spices. And then after that boil is complete, we run it through a whirlpool process to separate the solids from the liquids, cool off that liquid, and it goes into fermentation. Fermentation can take upwards of 2 weeks depending on the type of beer. That's where the yeast really come active. Mm-hmm. And then after fermentation is complete, we send it through filtration. Then we make sure the carbonation levels and the flavors are just right and send it into packaging.
Now, when you say the flavors, is that where the actual flavoring occurs? In other words, the beer coming out, it could be, you could do a number of things with that, and what you do is you flavor it at that point?
Oh, not at all. The flavor's actually set before we even get to the boil. So the flavor is determined by many factors: what types of grain you use and how much, and what the blend is, how hot the water is that you mix it with. That will determine how dry or how sweet a beer is. Then how much hops you add in the boil. So many factors. You can use different yeasts and get two completely different beers. Then you can filter it or not filter it. You can dry hop it or not dry hop it. There are many things you can do at any point in the process that will give you a completely different flavor.
Let's talk about the flavors of Lazy Magnolia. Mm-hmm. How many do you have?
At this time, we have about 10 out in the market at any given time. We have our low-gravity front porch series. We have our high-gravity back porch series. We have seasonals, and we have our really specialty beers that we call the debutante series.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you try beers out as far as the taste of them to see how they're going to go in the market?
Well, a lot of times we have to go on faith and realize that certain flavors gaining in popularity, such as Belgians or sours. So we know that a trend is coming through the U.S. In the Southeast, we're a little bit behind the times, so we always have a little bit of catch-up time. So we can see what's happening in California or Colorado or the Pacific Northwest and say, that's going to hit here in a couple of years, let's get ready.
When you talk about the marketing of Lazy Magnolia, then are you saying that some of the states, they're not all the same? In other words, the beers that Lazy Magnolia gives to those states could be different across the country.
Well, the customers choose what they want to drink. We have a wide variety, so say in Florida, for instance, it's a completely different climate than in Oklahoma, completely different types of food. So the beers that are going to be popular in those states are going to vary.
Mm-hmm. And that's what you look at, and hopefully you hit the nail on the head.
Well,
right?
That's why we work with our distributors very closely. They understand their market and they know what's going to work there. So they help to choose which blend of our products is going to be successful there.
Mm-hmm. Does the brewery operate 24 hours a day?
Well, the yeast operate 24 hours a day, but the employees thankfully do not have to.
I see. Okay, but the cookers are cooking.
Well, the fermenters are always active, yes. The fermentation is where the yeast are turning the liquid into beer.
Mm-hmm. As the owner, where do you see the company going? What would you like? What is your goal? You got the beer going out there. Now what?
Well, we would like to see Lazy Magnolia continue to grow into a large regional brewery. Essentially, I'll call on Abita again. We've been following in their footsteps for 10 years. Basically, take whatever Abita does and lop a zero off the end of it. That's us.
Uh-huh.
So we do see a clear path of where Lazy Magnolia can go. And also, it helps that Louisiana's laws are not too dissimilar from Mississippi's, so we can tell what the legislative environment will also allow us to do.
And speaking about that, do you find a lot of opposition in some of these states?
Not at all.
No? I mean, it's a certain amount of alcohol.
Well, alcohol is never really an issue. That's kind of a smokescreen put up by some groups. It's never really an issue.
Uh-huh.
The high alcohol issue had nothing to do with anybody worrying about somebody getting overindulged.
Right.
It was more about logistically how are we going to handle this influx of new brands and who is going to carry them. Is it going to be groceries? Is it going to be liquor store? And how are they going to be taxed? So it's issues that most customers don't really see day to day that happen in the background with the distributors and the chain that goes on in the background.
Mm-hmm. In the manufacturing, where does the higher alcohol content come from?
More grain.
More grain. Mm-hmm. Really? It's simple as that.
More grain equals more sugar equals more alcohol.
Wow. Okay. Easy to remember that. Well, I want to thank you very much for talking with us and telling us about Lazy Magnolia. You are an original.
We are an original, and we are always coming up with something new and a little bit crazy.